Here it is, straight from the horse's mouth. Hi, I'm Philip Blumel. Welcome to No Uncertain Terms, the official podcast of the Term Limits Movement for the week of January 31st, 2022.
Your sanctuary from partisan politics.
U.S. Rep. Ralph Norman represents the 5th District of South Carolina in the U.S. Congress. He also represents nearly 90% of the American people as the lead sponsor of the Congressional Term Limits Amendment resolution. We spoke with Representative Norman last week. Hello, Representative Norman. Welcome to the show.
Glad to be here, Philip. Thank you so much for having me.
Let's start out with a little bit about yourself before we get into the subject here. I know you represent the 5th District in South Carolina. You were elected to the U.S. Congress in 2017. What did you do in private life before the U.S. Congress?
Well, I'm a real estate developer by trade. We initially started housing, single-family housing development, then went into the commercial development of shopping centers and hotels, which is primarily what we're doing now. I came into the state legislature in 2005, the same year Nikki Haley ran for the state office and was elected as a House member. So served about 4 terms there, and then when Mick Mulvaney went to OMB, decided to run for the seat.
Okay. You know, Nikki Haley is a big supporter of term limits as well.
Oh, yeah. Nikki has been right on, not only with the way she governed the state, she's been right on when she was with the United Nations. She's been right on just about every topic that's ever thrown her way.
Good deal. Well, I was excited to speak with you today. I'm informed by the U.S. Term Limits team that you are one of, if not the most committed sponsor that the Congressional Term Limits Amendment resolution has ever had in the House. And we've had some stars. Ron DeSantis, now governor of Florida, when he was in the House, was the sponsor of this bill. Where did your fire on this issue come from?
Well, a couple of things. One, when I was in the state legislature, you had people who had been holding office for 20, 30, some even 40 years. And the same that I'm seeing now in Congress, you have people serving, as in Joe Biden, for half a century, and now so many members who have served for 25, 30 years. And everything has a time limit on it. If you're a commercial pilot, when you turn 65, you have to give it up. And to go to whether it's a state legislature or to Washington and live off the taxpayer's dime is unconscionable to me. And that's not how the Constitution was set up. If you look at the favorable rating with with voters, it's 90-some%.
Now, there's 78 co-sponsors on the bill. That's HJR 12. And I might note there's 18 senators who have signed on to the Senate version as well. Right. Now, this is the most co-sponsors the resolution has had at one time. So we'll get into a little bit of mechanics here. How do you and your team solicit support for the bill? Are you knocking on doors in the Capitol, or are Congress members coming to you? How's that work?
Both ways. Typically, I will see a member that somebody else has talked to or that I know has supported in the past and that signed the term limits pledge when they ran for office.
Oh, right.
And when you mentioned that not only did they sign the bill, sign the term limits pledge, but there's a 95% approval rating of voters. What's wrong with signing on to it, particularly we've got a lot of young members coming on, which is a good thing. And so when we hear of names, I reach out to them, I call them. We will hopefully add another 10 to 20 over the next 60 to 90 days based on conversations I've had.
Yeah. Well, based on standards of the U.S. Congress, you are a young member, by the way.
Well, Congress will age you, I will tell you that.
I believe it. Is it ever uncomfortable talking about this issue with fellow Congress members? I mean, yeah, it sounds great when they're saying it to the voters. I know that's an applause line, and it has that polling, as you mentioned. But it also would directly affect, the fellow member you're talking to. Is that ever an issue with talking to fellow members?
No, because I think deep down, Philip, people know it's right. When you see members in the hallways can barely move around because of their age, and it's just, everything has a time limit on it. And the framers of the Constitution, I think were people that went to work, made a living, and then politics was something was a service to them. But when they finished their day, they came home. We've expanded government so much; it's got to be a career. And the only way to do it is to mandate it like this. And the only way to do it, and we answer all the time the critics who say, well, every 2 years we have term limits because the voters can put us out of office. My argument would be, look at the amount of money that goes into campaigns. Right. That it's tough to go to run for office, and then it's tough to beat an incumbent. And because of the money that they get, a lot of times from voting a certain way. But you need to have to go home and work under some of these laws that you've passed, and you get out of touch with the American people if you don't.
You make a good point about the money. Statistically in the House where you are, the candidate that raises the most money wins the seat over 90% of the time. And an interesting also that it's because another 90 number is the fact that an incumbent running for their own seat wins over 90% of the time. And of course, these numbers are practically the same because there's so much overlap.
It is. So. And I've seen in Congress, you can get buried where people can't really follow your votes if you're not really paying attention. The American people want to send us up to Congress to, particularly now, provide limited government, return freedom to the people, and to come home. Unless you have something mandated, it's just not going to happen. I tried to get and I think it was in 2019, it put on the ballot. Just simply ask the question on the ballots that went out, would you like to have term limits? And I couldn't get that passed. But, I think now it's a new day. I think now with what's happening with Joe Biden and his cognitive decline based on his age, people are having an open ear to it. And I think we'll eventually get there.
I think you're right. Now, polls show that a supermajority of Democrats as well as Republicans support congressional term limits. That 90% number you threw out there, that includes everybody. But now most of the co-sponsors of your resolution are Republicans. Why is that? Why do you think that is?
Well, I think, most people, most conservatives that identify with the Republican Party know it's right. I think you've got a lot of Democrats who are typically big government, particularly now, the ones serving now, they're radical big government people. They were put up by groups that basically do the bidding for them. And they put a lot of money into campaigns, and they pretty much control the candidates. We need people who are not controlled by anybody. But I think the Democrats, if they really believe in the fact that they're for the people, they want to help, the masses, then put yourself out there, serve for a fixed period of time. And, as our bill, the bill I have and the one that Senator Cruz has, 6 years in the House, 2 terms in the Senate, 12 years. Once we get enough signatures, we can debate, should it be what particular number is magical? Should it be 10 years? Should it be 12 years in the House? Should it be 3 terms in the Senate? We can have that debate as well as when it takes effect. And from what I'm hearing, people will really buy into it if it takes effect after it's tacked on to the current term. So let's just say we pass a 6-3 term for the House. Somebody's been in there 10 years. They effectively can serve 16 years, which I'm fine. I just want a number that goes into the Constitution, is mandated, and will send the right signal to this country that you can't go to Washington, D.C. and live off the government forever. Right.
Well, we definitely agree with you on that. And the fact that the past years don't count is fine. The date of the term limit will come. And plus, it probably takes some preparation, too, for all the turnover in seats. So I think you're definitely right about that. So you're seeing a disconnect between the Democratic politicians in office and the Democrats on the street, because the ones in office are not joining your bill, and the ones in the street are highly supportive. I want to throw out a little positive note, though, because even though there's one Democrat, as you note, on the bill right now, there's a couple more coming down the pike. We've got Sheila Shirfullis McCormick from South Florida, who won a special election this year to replace Alcee Hastings. She signed the U.S. Terminalist Pledge to support your bill. And so did Representative Jared Golden of Maine, another Democrat who was elected in 2019. Hasn't gotten on the bill yet, but presumably will shortly. How helpful is the pledge that we're handing around in getting convincing Congress members to sign on as a co-sponsor to your bill?
It's very helpful. You can't have enough of them that are spread around. And, now part of the reasons, the ones there's a disconnect with the Democrat on the street and the Democrat that's serving, it's so polarized right now. I mean, if you look at the last 12 months, look at what's happened to this country. And it's hard to imagine the Democrats that are voting for this socialist legislation. And it's pretty polarized. Now, the Democrat on the street, you don't see it up close and personal like I see it. I mean, it's hard to have a conversation when you talk to a Democrat who votes for the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, which takes away photo voter ID, and support same-day voter registration, or, pick any of the boondoggles that this administration has had, the invasion at the border, the withdrawal of Afghanistan. The list goes on and on. So it's polarized, but the literature you're giving out helps build momentum with the elected office holders who are Democrats will have to listen to. And I will say this too: if you sign a term pledge and then don't sign on to my bill, there's consequences, because they ought to be advertised as why did you sign a term limits pledge and then you're reneging on it? How's that going to work on your reelection?
Right.
That's very
well.
effective.
We definitely try to hold their feet to the fire when they pull that, because they get the benefit from, as they know full well what the polls say about term limits and people's support for it, and they get the benefit from that while they're running. And then if they get in and don't sign in their bill, it really says something negative about them. And you make a good point, too, about the polarization. I think maybe that's another reason why it's so difficult to get Democrats on the bill, simply is because you're a Republican. And it's just the conversation isn't healthy right now with people in their camps, No,
but, so many conservatives feel the fabric of our nation is being torn apart by the Biden administration, and it is. And so, and then when you combine that the Democrats, and there's a lot of dissension in their party, with Nancy Pelosi, they're not going to buck her. And they're scared to death of, what she may do to them. So you've got that lever that she has, and her mantra is don't do anything Republicans want at any level. But we're going to keep doing it, and we're not going to quit. We're going to keep trying.
So where do we go from here? Now, you've introduced the bill. You're working to add co-sponsors. What kind of threshold would you have to reach, do you think, to get a hearing on this resolution? I mean, what would it take to get your first hearing on this term limits resolution?
Well, I just need to get the signatures. We need to get the 2/3 in the House, which are 290, and to get to 67 in the Senate. And then we move it on. I mean, Ted Cruz is doing a good job. It's all about getting signatures now for me. Mm-hmm. Okay. And that's what, because we're attempting to change the Constitution, and that's our goal. And I think by the end of this year, I should have another 20 to 30. Which means it's going to be we're going to be able, and with the upcoming elections, with the midterms, we should see a big swing on signing onto the bill.
Well, naturally, everyone listening to this podcast, no uncertain terms, wants to see a resolution succeed. What can people outside of Washington do to help you? I mean, does a letter to their Congress member really matter? I mean, is a group of citizens coming to congressional office next year's have any effect, or the sign waving in their district get attention? What can people do out here that will back you up in what you're trying to do up there?
Great question. What your listeners need to do is to call their particular congressman that they get to cast a vote for, especially the ones that signed the term limit pledge. Those that have not signed the term limit pledge, try to get them, the constituents, to sign on. It does no good for, like I'm from South Carolina, it does no good for any of the voters in this state to write Nancy Pelosi a letter. We can't hold her accountable because we can't vote for her. So you've got to make it, localize it where each state and each congressional district, the we the people take charge and contact their congressman, particularly now with the midterms coming up. Whether you're Democrat, Republican, you're looking at the election. You need support, particularly Democrats, because the tide is against them.
Right.
And people have suggested it's going to be a 23 to 40, seat changeover. Why not get the Democrats who are running now to sign on? Because a lot of incumbents are going to get beat. You got 28 that are retiring on their own.
Yeah.
So it's a wonderful opportunity.
It is. No offense, but we really hope that Democrats take up this issue. They need one that resonates with people. The ones that they're getting from Washington right now are not resonating with people. So I think that would be very effective for them. And I'd like to see more of them pick up the flag,
My message to them is, why is this not a positive for you? With this kind of approval rating among the voters, how does this hurt you? And if they take the Republican banner off of it as being a win for Republicans and think just what's good for the country, then we win and we'll get our constitutional amendment.
If it was a bipartisan bill, it'd be a win for everybody.
Exactly right. It's how it's meant to be.
Yep. Well, thank you very much, Representative Norman. We really appreciate your efforts on behalf of the voters, Democrats and Republicans, who want to fix the Congress. So thank you for your work and thank you for your time today.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thanks for joining us for another episode of No Uncertain Terms. The term limits convention bills are moving through the state legislatures. This could be a breakthrough year for the term limits movement. To check on the status of the term limits convention resolution in your state, go to termlimits.com/takeaction. There, you will see if it has been introduced and where it stands in the committee process on its way to the floor vote. If there's action to take, you'll see a Take Action button by your state. Click it. This will give you the opportunity to send a message to the most relevant legislators, urging them to support the legislation. They have to know you are watching. That's termlimits.com/takeaction. If your state has already passed the term limits convention resolution, or the bill's not been introduced in your state, you can still help. Please consider making a contribution to U.S. term limits. It is our aim to hit the reset button on the U.S. Congress, and you can help. Go to termlimits.com/donate. termlimits.com/donate. Thanks. We'll be back next week.
Contact your state lawmakers before they vote on term limits for Congress. Go to termlimits.com/takeaction.
USTL